Okay, good evening, folks. This is the ClimbSci podcast. This is episode 8, and my name is Tom Herbert, and I'm with Brian Rigby.
Hello, everyone.
So tonight, this is a little bit of a delayed one. We were supposed to do one last month, but I was crazy busy, and then my laptop broke. So basically, it was pushed to now. So this is
Yep.
August the 22nd today. This is going to be a slightly different podcast this time because this is going to be our first Q&A, and hopefully we'll do a few of these. But basically, we collect some questions from people around after various podcasts and on the social medias, and we thought we'd just go through them tonight. So this one's going to be a little bit more casual, and yeah, so. So Brian, let's do a first question here. How are you doing?
How am I doing? I'm doing all right. Got a little fatigue going on, some weird, possibly post-radiation side effect, but that's getting better. I just need about 10 hours of sleep every night. So it's more sleep than I like to get, but it is what I need now. So trying to work that into my life. How about you? Hopefully your life is a little bit less tiring.
Well, if anyone watching the video should realize that I just become more disheveled every time I do these podcasts.
It's true. Your stubble, I mean, I assume you're shaving, but perhaps it's just growing at a very slow rate. But yeah,
I was
you might have quite the beard by the time, the podcast goes off the air sometime in the hopefully distant future.
I actually shaved this morning, so this is my life.
Oh, wow. You're one of those. Yeah, I have a friend who just grows a beard so fast, and get a look close to the camera so you can see my magnificent stubble. This is the product of, oh man, I don't think I've shaved in a week. I can't ever grow a beard. It's never going to happen. It gets to the point where people are like, "Oh, are you growing a beard?" And I'll say, "No, I just haven't shaved in 3 weeks." They're like, "Oh, well, it looks good. You should keep growing." It's like, well, the problem is if I just let it keep growing, it just like 4 hairs get randomly longer. It just starts to look patchy and it starts to look like I have very poor hygiene. So I try to keep it at least stubble length, if not clean shaven. Always wanted a beard, but we don't always get what we want.
Exactly. Listen. I envy your hair. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, I do have that at least. I do have that. It's going a little gray now, but it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. Or the thought of it.
Anyways, enough of this bromance. Right. Let us jump in here. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to read the questions verbatim, and we'll take it from there. So would you like me to read the first one, or do you want to?
Either way. Okay. Sounds like you're excited to read it, so jump right in.
Okay, so we have a question here from Anze or Anze.
I think I looked it up, and I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Angers.
Oh, right.
Emphasis on the J part, but feel free to write in and correct us if we get any of your names wrong. Doesn't help us right now, of course, but no. I like to at least take it
back, the surname.
I was just looking it up to try to say Podgorjek, maybe. I don't know.
Anyway, okay. So thank you for asking questions. So the question goes like this: how long is the protein intake window for optimal muscle protein synthesis when you consume the recommended 20 grams? If I take a whey shake, it obviously gets into the system really quickly, but I suppose I get 20 grams of protein from meat in a big meal with some sweet potatoes that you mentioned might take 4 hours to digest. Will my body recognize that I took 20 grams and start to synthesize immediately, or will the slow digestion weaken the absorption and synthesis? The same can be asked for proteins in, say, rice. You can get 20 grams of protein from rice, but it takes hours to digest and absorb it all. And it says, a side question, you never mentioned this, but I've heard that because you take proteins in shakes as isolates, that your body absorbs them really quickly, there might be some negative effects on your kidneys or liver. I can't remember which, and that causes your capillaries to expand, which might be a bad thing for your brain. I don't remember exactly, but would like to know if you guys have heard of any such effects.
This is a good question. I think it's the most complicated question, so it's a good place to start too, because if there's a question that we're going to spend a half an hour on, it's this one, and hopefully we won't spend half an hour, but it's definitely the most complicated of them. I think we should probably tackle it in two parts. Talk about the optimal, the window first, or the differences in digestion speed, and then talk about any potential effects on capillaries or kidneys or liver, etc. after we nail down the first part. Sound like a good plan?
Yeah, go for it.
So it's a kind of a complicated question to answer, because the honest truth is we don't really understand protein kinetics perfectly, or even that well. What we know, what Tom and I have discussed at length, especially in the protein episode, is that this 20-gram figure is, we know that that's pretty accurate, regardless of whether it's whey or casein or beef or egg or pea protein or rice protein or whatever. Usually, especially in these studies, they're getting them from shakes, not from whole sources. There is one like whole beef source thing, but the bottom line is usually it's around this 20 to 25 grams of protein, around a 1.5 grams to 2.5 grams of leucine is a specific threshold for it. So broad, in the big picture, we understand that much. When we start getting into the nitty-gritty details of how it all works out that way, it gets more complicated. So again, narrowing in slightly more, we can say that the difference between a fast digesting and slow digesting protein is, like, if you take whey, you're going to get a spike of amino acids, and that spike it comes faster and it goes faster. And if you have something like casein, something a little bit slower digesting, you don't get the same spike, but it also takes longer to come down. Between the two, if you compare the area under the curve, if you actually compare, how much of an effect it has, then they work out roughly the same. So it doesn't appear that protein speed really has any significant effect on muscle growth or repair or recovery or anything like that. It's more about how much protein you're getting, and specifically how much leucine you're getting, assuming you're getting an otherwise quality protein source. Now that leaves, I think, some big questions there. Questions that you specifically mentioned, like what does happen if you have a big meal and it's going to take you a long time to digest it. Where does that spike initially happen? Where does protein synthesis start ramping up? And these aren't questions we really have a good answer to. I think that in the next 20 years we'll probably start getting some, but if you just look at like digestion speeds, it's really incredible how all over the board the speed of digestion for different proteins is. We have whey, which is the fastest protein that we really know about. I think I've read pork is pretty fast as well, where we can digest and absorb it at around 10 grams per hour. So that's the most rapid. Then you have things like unheated eggs, which are extremely slow, at only maybe like 1.5 to 2.5 grams per hour. And vegetable proteins are somewhere down around that as well. And then you have, most high quality proteins are somewhere 3 to 7 grams per hour. So I think what was casein might be like 7 grams per hour. I don't think that these exact numbers are actually all that important, because again, like I said, it doesn't appear to make any difference in outcome. They're not clinically relevant, but it is really interesting that you could, hypothetically take a whey protein shake, and if you, get portion out exactly to 20 grams, you will hypothetically have absorbed 100% within 2 hours. 2-hour mark hits, and hypothetically you've absorbed it all. But if you have like, some cooked egg protein, which you should always be having cooked egg protein anyway. The raw white is not a very We're just not very good at digesting it, and it also will potentially cause biotin deficiencies in the future. So cook your eggs if you're going to be consuming them frequently as a protein source.
Yeah, so Rocky was wrong on that one.
Yeah, that was not not his best move. But why is it that if those are only hypothetically absorbed at 3.5 grams per hour, or digested and absorbed, I should say, why is it that they have the same effect? And we don't really know necessarily. We should also say that the absorption, I think the absorption, when our body is absorbing only individual amino acids and di and tripeptides at times, the absorption rate, once they're in their individual amino acid forms of those di and tripeptides, that's going to be the same. The difference in speed comes down to the protein structure. Our body has different enzymes that are only capable of cleaving certain amino acids off the end of chains, in certain sequences. So we produce those enzymes in different amounts, and different proteins, of course, have different structures. So some proteins like whey just happen to have a structure that our body can rapidly disassemble, whereas others, do not have that same easily disassembled structure. And then proteins also occasionally, or the foods that contain these proteins also occasionally contain other chemicals that will inhibit our enzymes from working, or specifically prevent us doing that. That's one of the problems with egg whites. Some of the other proteins in egg whites, I believe, inhibit the actual degradation of protein. So I think the long and short of it, the basic answer is you shouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
If you're having a protein shake, then you're going to get your protein, but you're also getting your protein if you have a complex meal, including a slower digesting protein and some fats and carbohydrates, which are going to slow digestion even further. However it works out, it's going to work out. You're going to get the protein from that meal, and you're going to gain the same benefit from that meal as if you had just had like 20 grams of whey protein and then waited 2 hours so that you absorbed it as rapidly as possible, and then ate regular food.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. The more complicated answer is we don't know exactly why this does not seem to make the difference, except that we can say that the slower digesting a protein is, the longer of an effect it will have, and that in the end, whether it's a short and spiky effect or a long and more rounded effect, they work out to be the same.
Yeah, I think we can say though that, and I can't remember the study, that if you were to sustain high blood levels of amino acids, this is not beneficial. So if you were somehow on a kind of protein amino acid drip, this would not. I think it's a kind of you need that, the refractory period or something, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah,
dip.
our muscles become protein full or whatever. They reach a point where they are no longer receptive to amino acids, and exactly as Tom said, there's a refractory period, which is, for what's worth, another part of protein. The protein kinetics that we don't really understand that well. We understand enough that we now know there is one, but we don't know how long it is. We don't know how it differs from person to person. We don't know what other factors affect it, or how you could hypothetically increase the speed, or increase the length or decrease the length of the refractory period. Another big question in the world of dietary protein.
Yeah, I think just in terms of application here, I think the main thing is this is not something that you should really be that concerned about in any practical sense. Where I don't think it would be benefit would be if you're eating meals and then drinking, let's say, you have a tub of BCAAs on your desk and just drinking those throughout the day. I think it appears that it's better to have meals than to constantly dose. And like we say in the protein podcast, we're looking at like 3 to 5 meals really of 20 to 40 grams of protein, depending on how big you are. But yeah. Do you want to, this wasn't asked in the question, but just in a sense, how would you explain to people because this myth still goes around, that you can only absorb so much protein in a single meal, and that supposedly if you ate 50 grams of protein, you're wasting it.
How would I explain that?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that there is the level of waste is a true statement? I mean,
I don't know, because this is another one of those, I think, answers that probably has a more complicated, or a question that has probably a more complicated answer than we currently understand. I think we can both agree if you have 100, like if you're going to eat 120 grams of protein a day and you consume it all at once, you're probably not going to get the same benefit from it as if you spread it out into a few meals at least. But then on the same token, I think if you have 120 grams if you're going to have a single meal, and you have 120 grams in that single meal, you're better off than if you have just 30 grams in a single meal. So I've heard some hypotheses on it, such as that our enterocytes, the cells lining our intestine, can hold on to protein, can hold on to these amino acids for a little while and then release them into the blood as they need. I haven't seen any conclusive evidence of that. I don't know if you have either. But
yeah, I think carry on.
Sorry, I was just gonna say there is waste. We know that as you increase protein above this 20-gram threshold, that you see more and more oxidation of amino acids. So that is waste in a sense. I mean, you're getting some energy from it, so it's not like you're not doing anything. It's not like you're just, peeing out amino acids at that point. You're peeing out some, but you're also using them. And probably if it's a gigantic meal and it's a whole food, like if you have just a giant slab of beef, you're probably going to, lose some of that through your feces as well. You're just probably not going to, if it's complex, you're probably not going to be able to break it all down within, that 4-hour period of time or so that we have before food passes into the part of our digestive tract where it can no longer absorb the nutrients, at least not protein. So there will be some waste, and that waste will depend on how complex the food is and exactly how large it is. If it's something like 50 grams, I think you'll see considerably less waste than if you, again, ate like 120 grams worth of steak in one sitting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's all relative as well to what you've been doing, your steady, your muscles, how long ago you ate your last meal and things like that.
Yeah.
I think the easiest way to think about it is not to worry about whether or not you're wasting it, but rather you can think about it in terms of wasting your money. If you're having, I mean, it's less likely in the UK, but if you have massive steaks in the US, it's probably worth you cutting the steak in half. If you've got like a 60 gram steak that you're going to eat in one meal, which is probably nice, and you're on a budget, it's better to cut that in half and have it at 2 different meals. In a sense, it could be more optimal that way, but
yeah. I mean, I think the other thing that that might answer some of that question too is our body is pretty good at regulating homeostasis. It's pretty good at adjusting to what it's like. So if you are, as Tom was saying, if you're in a state where your body is needing more protein, whether because you haven't eaten, like you're for some reason eating only one protein containing meal per day, or you just have a greater need due to exercise or something, our body's pretty good at upregulating, downregulating. I haven't seen this to be true. I haven't seen evidence for this or any papers about this when it comes to the macronutrients, but our body does it just frequently with all of the micronutrients, all the vitamins and minerals. It upregulates and downregulates how much it uses them and also how much it will absorb of them. So when you are, if you happen to be in have a low vitamin B2 diet, for example, your body will upregulate how much vitamin B2 it's absorbing from food.
Okay, so I'm just quickly looking at, just to finish this first bit off. So I wonder if she's saying here, how long is the protein intake window for optimal muscle protein synthesis when you consume the recommended 20 grams? I wonder if she's thinking about how close you can stick meals together. And I think, literally, if you're taking your total amount of protein you want to have per day, which is, we say, is about 1.6 grams per kilo, then you want to just divide that evenly across the day would be the more optimal way of doing it. So I don't think. Well, yes. If you're doing a training session or something, and you have a whey shake straight after the training session, and then maybe an hour and a half later you're going to have a sit down meal. I don't think you should worry too much that you're wasting the protein in the meal that you're having later. Because that will be slower digesting if it's a whole source. So most likely, within an hour later of that, those amino acids are going to come into circulation. So really, on a practical standpoint, there is no reason to worry about this too much.
Yeah, there's no real window. Eat your meals when they fit into your day, and try to have at least 3, if not 4, or in upper limits 5 protein containing meals per day. But fit your meals into your day. Don't try to fit your meals around your workouts or with a specific goal. Just, I guess, eat like a normal person and make sure that your meals have a decent amount of protein in them, 20 grams at least.
Yeah, that at least thing is more the important thing, and then total protein by the day. Okay, so talking about lots of protein, so let's answer this. So some negative effects on your kidneys or liver. I haven't heard about this capillaries thing. This is a new one to me. Causes your capillaries to expand, which might be bad thing for your brain. Is this something that you've heard before?
I've never heard of that either. No. I'm trying to think of why that. I mean, I guess I shouldn't just outright call it a myth, but I mean, we just don't have any evidence. Like all these, there's always people talking about protein having negative effects. Like you shouldn't eat too much protein because it'll do this to your liver, or it'll do this to your kidney. I think I've heard it for both of them. It doesn't really matter which one though. It's definitely kidneys the more common one, but I've certainly heard it in relation to liver as well. The bottom line is there just isn't any evidence. We've never seen protein cause any kidney problems in somebody who did not already have kidney disease, in which case that's a completely different scenario.
And also, protein is not going to cause kidney disease, because that's somehow some people would think about it.
Exactly. Like when you have a medical condition, sometimes that medical condition requires dietary restraints. Some people are born without the ability to metabolize phenylalanine, but that does not mean that nobody should ever have phenylalanine in their diet. It just means that if you have a particular condition that necessitates a dietary change, then that is a condition that you personally have to live with. It doesn't mean that they're linked together, or that one is always bad in a case. So protein, potentially, if you had a kidney disease or poor kidney function, potentially you would have to change your diet to be more restrictive in protein, according to your doctor, as per your doctor's instructions. If you do not have any kidney problem, then protein is not gonna. There's no reason to worry about your protein intake.
Yeah, and we spoke about this on the first podcast on protein, and we talked about the 2 studies by Jose Antonio, where these are the highest protein studies, I think, to date. And we're talking about, I think the guys, there were 2 done. One was, I think, 6 months, and the other one was a year. And the guys were getting, I think they're averaging about 300 grams of protein per day. And one of the subjects was consuming, I think, 600 grams of protein a day. I think that was a shorter one. That was a 6-month one. But the 300 was definitely 300. Basically, they were doing a study of 4.4 grams per kilo per day. What was incredible about this is that at the end of this year's study, they looked at all the blood markers and stuff, and there was nothing there. There was no significant effect that would indicate any kidney or urinary problems.
Yeah.
So the only side effects of eating that much protein was, I think, constipation and heat because of the thermic effect. But the point being is that, like, if you look at any of the research now, the recommendation for protein is being pushed way above the RDA, almost everywhere now. More and more people are coming out to say that this is not an issue, and there is this myth of protein being harmful is not. The only time that protein can be harmful is to your wallet, like I've said before.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Just I feel like people like you and me, we're really treading the middle ground. We're fighting a front on both sides, because there are these people who are consuming just ridiculous amounts of protein every day. 600 to 700 at the sports nutrition conference I went to in July. These might be studies that you were referencing, but anyway, or they might have been participants in those studies, I think. But one of them had like 1,000 grams of protein in his day.
Oh.
And his diet was just like so repetitive. It did not look like a diet that would be fun to eat, but these are people that have goals, and they're consuming this much protein because they think it's going to benefit their bodybuilding goals. It's not. There's definitely a lot of waste there. I mean, it is benefiting in a sense, but that sense is that they're using all that protein as calories. They would just be better off consuming tastier calories in the form of fats or carbohydrates. But there's that whole camp where, they're constantly trying to prove that you need this much protein in order to get really swole, which you don't. You just don't need that much. But then there's the other end of the spectrum where people are, saying we really don't need a lot, and even athletes, even athletes training hard, only need the RDA of 0.8 grams per kilogram, which is like 60 grams per day for a male, or like 50 grams per day for a female, where it's probably way too low. They're closer, at least.
Yeah.
That's a lot closer to an appropriate amount, but still too low. Better off getting this kind of, like, I guess, 80 to 120 gram range is, you're pretty safe if you consume that much in a few meals.
Yeah, and like, I literally spoke to a client an hour before we started this podcast, and the recommendation for him is 120 grams. So this is not a lot of protein. You certainly don't need that much.
No, it's not. I would never. I call it a high protein diet when I'm talking to people who don't eat a lot of protein, but it's not a high protein diet. I would say it's well within the moderate range. Even if you're vegan, it's not that hard to get that much from plant-based sources, at least if you provided you're eating beans.
Yeah, but I do urge you, if you have a good 2.5 hours, to go listen to our protein podcast. We're pretty
get some more in-depth answers.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for the question, Ajay.
Yeah, thank you.
On to the next one. This one is from Ben Strickland, and he writes. He also has two questions here, so I'll read them both, but then we'll break them apart. He writes, for endurance athletes, it's common to focus on developing a strong aerobic base. Are there benefits to climbing by training in the same vein? How local is lactate/hydrogen buildup? Can training my legs' aerobic systems to uptake and more effectively use lactate for fuel aid my arms and increase their maximum lactate steady state? Or do I need to develop the forearm cells themselves in such a way? Thanks for the podcast. And the second question, can you guys also sometime talk a bit about collagen types? I've heard there's two, and one is stronger than the other. Tendon health / recovery in general, and dietary needs and timing in this regard. So I know you'll have plenty to say about collagen, but maybe we should start with the lactate, since that was the first one in the order.
Sure. So actually, this was something I had not come across, this MLSS. So I had to actually look this up. So the definition we have for this maximal lactate steady state is defined as the highest blood lactate concentration, which is MLSSC, and workload, MLSS work, that can be maintained over time without a continual blood lactate accumulation. So I had a look at this, and this is basically, it's almost synonymous with anaerobic threshold. And from what I understand is, it's basically the work output that you can, or the work you can put out at your maximum, your anaerobic threshold or lactate threshold where you're in a balance between using lactate for energy and producing it. So you're not accumulating net lactate, if that makes sense.
Right.
So let's answer this from the way that he's asked it here.
Sure.
Because there's lots going on here. So okay, for endurance athletes, it's common to focus on developing a strong aerobic base. Are there benefits to climbing by training in the same vein? Okay, so we covered a little bit of this in our cardio podcast. But yeah, Brian, do you want to just kind of do a little bit summary on aerobic base for climbing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a benefit. You know, there's no harm in having a strong circulation system, but the bottom line is, you know, these activities, most of the aerobic changes are very specific to the muscles that you're working. So, you know, if you're running a lot and you develop a strong aerobic base for running, it does not transfer necessarily even to something as similar as cycling. Like, you'll certainly be better, and cycling is way closer to running than, you know, it is to climbing. But it's, you're developing the muscles in such a way that, you know, you're developing more mitochondria in the muscles, for example, or more capillary density. And these are things that only affect the muscles that they are specifically working. So you can't really, like, you couldn't develop a strong aerobic base for running and expect that base to have the same strength if you were then to switch to climbing. Which I think if you had never climbed before, but you were a really strong runner, you would notice immediately. Like, you wouldn't be able to get on and just climb for days. You know, assuming that it wasn't an exceedingly hard problem. Even if you chose a very easy problem on the wall, you would still be off the wall probably in less than a minute, just because you don't have the muscles built for it. You don't have the ability to use those muscles in the, you know, for the same length of time as you have the ability to use your leg muscles.
Yeah. So to answer the next question, how local is lactate hydrogen buildup? Very local is the answer. So,
the most local.
Yeah. So that's exactly it. So this is not to say that so just to back up a little bit. So when you are doing greater intensities of exercise, you're in an anaerobic energy. You're working more in the anaerobic energy system, and one of the byproducts of glycolysis is this production of lactate. And along with that, you have these dissociated hydrogen ions, which is causing the burn in the most part. So,
right.
What we know is that lactate is taken up predominantly by the exercising muscle, along with oxygen used to metabolize that. Did I get that correct? Do you need oxygen for lactate metabolism?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Then other muscles, including your brain, which is not a muscle, but other tissues, also take up that lactate, but at a far, far less amount. So there has been studies done with, I think it was skiers who are doing skiing with just one leg somehow on a, like a treadmill.
I heard skiers doing skiing, and it took me a bit.
Oh, sorry.
These are humans skiing.
Yes.
I get it now, not bulls.
Yeah, not bulls. Sorry. And they've done it with cycling as well. Where basically they train one leg and they look at the kinetics in the other leg. And yes, the other leg does take up lactate, but like not anywhere close as the exercising muscle. So what we can say is that lactate clearance and blood flow is going to be impacted by the conditioning of your heart and delivery of oxygen to your muscles. So by being fitter in an aerobic sense, is going to improve that kinetics and lactate clearance, or rather lactate moving through the system, so coming out of the muscles and things like that. And that would be a kind of a systemic thing, because your blood is pumped and you have a stronger stroke rate and things like that. What as Brian said, what's not going to happen is that if you are training your legs, your arms are not going to be trained. It's not going to work like that. The way to develop your forearms is to train your arms. So now I have a very long page of sciencey stuff, but I'm not going to bore you with that. Let me find some more interesting things. So the main you have transporters in the muscle fibers called monocarboxylate transporters. Then there's a type 1 and a type 4. And basically, we know that some of the adaptation to high intensity training or anaerobic training is that you upregulate various enzymes, protein transporters, that is going to deal, same with mitochondria, to deal with the energy flux and these byproducts of training. So what you got to think about is you get good at doing what you do the most. That's the simplest thing. So if you want to get good at clearing lactate or buffering hydrogen ions, is that you need to do work in that modality that's going to be causing that. So what we know is that the high intensity training enhances pH regulation, muscle buffering capacity, upregulates the transporters, the MC1 and MC4, and other signaling things. And what I'm trying to say here, what we do know is that these transporters, they get down-regulated with disuse. So if you've been doing a lot of endurance training on the wall, so that you are in a state where you're taxing the muscles and there's a lot of time under tension, and you're working and you're building that base up, and over time you're going to get better and better in the endurance capacity. If you were to take, normally it's like 6 weeks, these people get detrained in these studies, those transporters get reduced along with other enzymes and things. And if you go back and were to try and do the same training that you did before, you would find it a lot harder. So cut a long story short is by increasing your general fitness, you're going to increase your heart ability to pump blood around the body. You're going to improve your general health. To train to get better in endurance for certain muscles, you have to train those muscles themselves. What is a little bit unclear, and I think it is still unclear, is what is most beneficial in terms of causing adaptation for this. Is it lots of high intensity work, or is the longer duration stuff beneficial? I think the easiest way to think about it is that the two sides of the coin are to cause the signaling for the muscles to adapt. You would be doing types of training that would cause this buildup of these substrates, hydrogen and lactate and things, and your muscle has to adapt to deal with that. But the other side of the coin is that you have to practice the modality of what you're going to be doing, meaning that say you were doing huge amounts of bouldering to get this burn, that's not going to translate into that much benefit for you doing longer routes, because you're not practicing that. So it's the same as marathon runners or long distance runners or endurance events do better by incorporating high intensity training into their training blocks than if they didn't. But you can't just do high intensity training and expect to do endurance activities, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. You're also, you had talked about maximum lactate steady state, and I think there's an important distinction here between an activity like climbing and an activity like running, where, in running, you're going for at least 15 minutes, often a half an hour or more, an hour. Some people run even longer than that. I don't know how, but they do. And, we're talking about, this maximum lactate steady state. We're talking about increasing our body's, essentially increasing its aerobic capacity, its ability to, once it's broken that glucose down into the pyruvate molecules, and then, those pyruvates might get reduced to lactate, being able to shuttle that lactate into the mitochondria and aerobically metabolize it to gain, all that energy that is locked in, because we get so little energy from the anaerobic part of it. But for climbing, you're not going to be on the wall for 15 minutes straight, in pretty much all circumstances. You're going to be on the wall for, depending on what type of climbing you're doing, perhaps less than 30 seconds, or, probably, 5 to 10 minutes if you're doing a longer route outside that requires a little bit more careful thinking. But either way, you're working above the anaerobic threshold. So it's you do, like, there is a benefit, as we talked a little bit about in the I think both in the aerobic exercise episode and a later episode,
the recovery
one. There is a benefit to being able to, more efficiently use lactate, or, use the aerobic threshold system in general. But we're not in as dire, that's not our preferred fuel there. That's not the, we're not in the same sense, we're not going to be running short of, glucose in the same way that we might for a longer run, where we, really need to recycle lactate at as high of a rate as possible in order to get the maximum performance benefit and endurance benefit out of it. So in a sense, I think that, if you were specifically trying to increase your maximum lactate steady state, I don't even know how much of a benefit that would have in the forearms for something like climbing, which isn't to say that you can't train those systems, like Tom was saying, in a climbing specific way. Just that, maybe you shouldn't try to adapt your your training protocol for running, verbatim into a forearm exercise. Find a better climbing version.
Yeah, definitely. Are you right? Sorry.
Oh yeah. I get this thing where I can't speak for over 5 minutes in a row without starting to get this weird parched back throat that makes me want to cough some. So that's why I have this giant thing of water here now. It just helps me keep things moist back there, I guess.
Okay.
But that's okay, because we're about to talk about collagen, and I know that you got a lot to talk about on that, so my throat can recover.
Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, the second part of this question is, can you guys also sometimes talk about collagen types of it? There's two, and one is stronger than the other. I just realized that I picked my nose in the camera. That's shocking. Okay.
Oh man. Well, then you called attention to it too.
Yeah, good thing I'm wearing trousers. Okay. So, this is, I think we'll do a longer cast on some tendon health stuff in the future.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, but in general, I'm a little confused why Ben is asking about this, and the reason being is there's not really a way for you to differentiate this. I wonder if this is a kind of a nutritional thing.
You mean in terms of like the types
to eat? Yeah, and
Oh.
wonder if that's maybe the context of this a little bit. But yeah, let us know. But in general, right? So I'm going to read a little bit of my long article that I wrote, which you can find on the Useful Coach, called Nutrition for Soft Tissue Training, because this is about as succinct as I can get things. And it's not long, it's about 3 paragraphs, but this will fill in things. So, okay, so collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. It makes about 25% of total protein mass, and it has 4 distinct genes, blah, blah, blah. And there are main collagen types, type 1, 2, 3, and they're all there to serve, to provide tensile strength and to prevent overstretching. So type 1 is the most abundant collagen, and that's found in your tendons, ligaments, joint capsules, cartilage, skin, bones, dentine, sclera. And then type 2 makes up about 50% of your cartilage, and type 3 supports the walls of your intestinal tract, uterus, and blood vessels. So collagen proteins are very long peptide chains. You're looking at like 1,050 amino acids long, and they're wound around each other, forming a kind of a triple helix. And this coiled structure arises from the abundance of 3 amino acids: glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline, which repeat hundreds of times in a sequence, where it's like glycine, proline, X, or glycine X hydroxylane. And X is any amino acid other than glycine, proline, hydroxyproline, or tryptophan. So these are long chains, really long chains. And type 1 collagen molecules pack side by side in a kind of ordered structure, and then they cross-link at their ends to form fibrils. And this is the one that's often talked about having basically gram for gram stronger than steel. And it's because of the way this is packed. So now, does this actually answer the question at all? What the number one thing is that your protein intake over the day, if we're talking about this 100 to 120 grams a day, if it's high quality protein, is going to provide everything you need for your tendon health and recovery. In terms of poor recovery, that would be related, I think, in terms of how much loading you're doing and how frequent that loading is, and whether or not your diet has sufficient protein. And by sufficient, we're talking about this, what we think is roughly about 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kilo, right? So this is not what the context of this is. And I have a feeling, sorry, the cleaner's just coming in. Sorry, guys. I'm on the... I can turn the camera off if you want. I can turn the camera off if you want it clean. Yeah, do you want me to do that? Okay. So I'm going to turn the camera off and then carry on talking. Sorry, the cleaner's coming in. Okay, sorry, guys. Okay, so what we're looking at is, yeah, you can come in. Yeah, but yeah, do that. And that's fine, yeah. Okay, I've got the camera off. Thank you. Is basically the what am I going now? Sorry, I'm trying to think where I was. Okay, so what we're looking is that the number one thing that you can do for your tendon health is to continually load them, which you're doing with climbing, and to consume enough protein, which is going to support their health. Where there seems to be a little bit of tweaking is that potentially consuming collagen or gelatin, which is a less refined collagen, which collagen basically being ground up hooves and tendons and things from animals, there is some data to show that because your tendons have limited blood supply and rather work like sponges, they will absorb the substrates from the surrounding plasma as you exercise them or load them. So what's been looked at is that by consuming collagen or gelatin about half an hour before you do any training, these amino acids plus these peptides, so these glycine, hydroxyproline, things like that, joined together, can be absorbed into those tendons and ligaments and kind of shortcut the growth of some of those collagens. Basically, you're providing parts of the collagen fibril rather than having to manufacture them from straight amino acids, if that makes sense. So we do know that this appears to have some benefit. I would highly recommend you go to my website, useful.coach, and have a look at the article on nutrition for soft tissue training. You'll see it there in the list, because I also have like a 40-minute video presentation where I go into a lot of this in detail. So I think that's probably the best thing to do. But do I recommend for people to take collagen as climbers? I say to people they can try it, and I think it is more beneficial to take it before training rather than just to supplement it. In my video, I also say that potentially having glycine can be a useful thing. But yeah, I think that's the main thing, is have a look at my my video and the article on that, because that really does cover a lot there. Oh no, is Brian gone? Are you still there, Brian? Okay. Thank you. Brian has left the building for some reason. Okay. Just typed to me on Facebook to say that his internet has died and he'll be back in a bit. Okay. Yeah, this is a professional, very professional effort we do here at the ClimbSci studios. Okay, let's see if I can carry on here. It's going to be a while. So thanks, Ben, for that question. If anything's not clear, but from anybody who we've answered these questions, please ping us again and we'll try and clear up anything. So there's another question here by Thomas Murphy. And he says, I was curious about training session length and intensity. Is it at all beneficial to do more frequent short sessions versus longer, more exhausting sessions with longer breaks? So I'm not a climbing coach, neither is Brian. So I think the first thing would be, is to figure out what are you specifically wanting to train, because that's really going to dictate the types of sessions that you're going to have, how many you're going to have. Oh, Brian's come back.
I'm back.
Hi, mate. So I was just saying this. So I'm just reading this next question, Thomas Murphy's question.
All right.
And so yeah, I won't read it again because people have just heard it.
It's fine. So, I see it in my screen.
That's right. So I basically just said, as you're coming on, that fundamentally it's really to do with what you're trying to train and what you're doing. So I think when you say, is it at all beneficial to do more frequent short sessions versus longer, more exhausting sessions? I think the way you got to think about it is, you want to provide the best stimulus that you can to whatever you're trying to adapt, be that power, endurance, strength, and then you want to recover. So I think the word exhausting is the thing that's going to turn on. Is that if you're doing 1 or 2 really long, exhausting sessions a week, is that better than doing, say, more multiple shorter sessions? And the way that I think about it is really in terms of quality. So, and I have this with my personal training clients, is that I'm far more interested in the quality of the session than I am just getting people tired. So I think you need to have an idea of what you're trying to train in that session that you're going into. Have a goal for that session, know specifically what you're wanting. And that goal can be just to play as well. That's important. And then look at that against your training diary, which hopefully you have, and to understand whether you're getting better, or whether or not you're pushing yourself too much with these longer, more exhausting sessions, and that's actually having a negative effect.
Yeah. I think we could also say it depends on what exactly, like on, I guess, your experience level and what exactly you're training. So if we break strength down into just like 2 components, one being neuromuscular strength, like the strength of your nervous connections and how efficiently you can use your muscles, versus actual muscle strength, the actual size of the muscles and how much force they are physically capable of if there was no neurological inhibition whatsoever. Then we could say, like, for a beginner, for a person who's just starting to climb, and they're fresh, they don't have any muscles that have developed for climbing yet, they're probably better off doing more sessions of less that are less tiring, because they're still developing all of that neuromuscular strength. And if they're exhausting themselves, then they're not really going to be developing. I mean, first, they don't really need to develop the muscular strength nearly as much as they need the neuromuscular strength yet. And then second, they're just decreasing the total amount of time that they could be climbing, because by exhausting themselves so much, they're probably going to have to recover. I mean, most people remember what it was like when they first started climbing, and how much their forearms burned, and just how painful it was, and how long it took for them to finally get back to normal. So if you can avoid that to a certain extent, then that's good. If that means that you're going to be able to climb more and potentially develop that neuromuscular strength faster. I guess it could be potentially, if you're an experienced climber, if you're doing specific activities that are maybe using the muscles in novel ways, or if you're doing cross training, like I do a lot of bodyweight fitness, and sometimes if I'm moving on to a new exercise, it's more worthwhile to do it frequently in very small bits, just because a lot of these bodyweight exercises are, there's skills as much as they are strength based, and I just need time. I just need to teach the muscles what they're supposed to be doing, more than the muscles need to develop the strength to do it. So I think there's a difference there too, where aside from training quality, as Tom was emphasizing, thinking about where you are. If you are a newer climber, if you have more of a need to kind of build this neuromuscular base, then you might be better off doing, or as you're training a new skill, then you might be better off doing it more frequently for shorter periods of time. But at some point, you do need those exhausting sessions, provided that they are of quality.
Yeah, and I think as well, for certainly, since if we go tail the collagen question, is that if you're a newer climber, you can cause yourself trouble by doing a lot of longer, exhausting sessions, certainly on your hands. So, take that into account. It's really, again, to do with recovery. What you want to do is maximize your training volume and recovery. So, yeah, I think, so what is slightly interesting, because I answered this on a Facebook question, which is slightly related, and someone was asking about muscle growth. There was a recent study, I think it was recent, but I don't know, where they looked at people doing 1 rep max lifts versus 1 rep max lifts plus other higher volume, moderate intensity training. And what they found was that the guys who did the 1 rep max test only every, I think it was once or twice a week or something, they didn't grow, their muscles didn't grow significantly, but they got very good at 1 rep max tests, right? Which should be obvious. For those who did the testing plus the moderate intensity, intensity resistance training as well, they didn't get so good at the 1 rep max test, but they grew more muscle. So the point of that is that, again, it's to do with what you're trying to train is going to dictate really what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amy Christensen, she has a question here that says, she's got a few here. I'd be curious for y'all's thoughts on weight loss and RMR.
Sounds so unnatural coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, actually, maybe because she's from America, so do you want to read this question?
Sure. You're making that assumption based on the y'all?
No, I've spoken to her over Skype, so.
Okay, well, there you go. I'd be curious for y'all's thoughts on weight loss and RMR, resting metabolic rate. The Biggest Loser studies, are things pretty hopeless in terms of metabolism for those that have lost a lot of weight? Maybe for when you guys do a weight loss episode. And then she has a second question of, when are you doing a weight loss podcast? And then there's a third question not related to weight loss, which is, could you guys talk about what you do personally, what a day looks like for a sports nutritionist?
Maybe we can leave that one to the end after the next couple of questions.
Sure.
So let's do the weight loss bit first.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, I think it's a little bit overblown, this like the idea of metabolic damage. I mean, the biggest reason why people are going to regain weight, especially when you look at something like The Biggest Loser, for those of you unaware, a TV show, a competitive TV show where they're losing weight, is the main problem, the reason people gain back weight is because they haven't really changed their lifestyles or their habits or anything. You know, if you go to a boot camp and you're restricted and you're forced to do things, or you're at least heavily incentivized to do things, you'll probably have success. You know, if I told you that I would give you $1 million if in the next year you lose, you know, you get down to what the weight that you want, you are highly incentivized to do that, and you probably will. But afterwards, probably going to go right back to your old habits and your old things. Permanent weight loss is a lifestyle change. Diets don't work, except in the sense that when you change your diet as something that's going to be moving forward into the future, and that usually happens more incrementally. You can't just decide one day to, you know, go on the paleo diet and lose a bunch of weight unless you're intending the paleo diet to be your diet for the rest of your life, which maybe it is. And, you know, in which case maybe you'll have success with it. But most of the time, people, when they go on diets, you know, these are very large changes all of a sudden, and it's you know, they're not habits. It doesn't change any of their habitual actions or their reflexes, you know, when they're put into stressful situations or anything. And so the weight will return because you haven't really changed anything in your life. You've just temporarily changed some circumstances, and, you know, when circumstances change again, then you haven't, you know, quote unquote, learned anything. You've just you're the same person with the same, you know, mentality regarding these things. So I don't think it's really that, you know, like if you lose a lot of weight, your resting metabolic rate will decrease, just because fat, even though it doesn't burn a lot of calories, it does have a metabolic cost, and you are going to, over time, you'll probably also lose some muscle as you're losing weight as well. You're going to lose a little bit of your metabolic rate, but it's not such a big difference that explains why you suddenly would start gaining weight again. I don't think it's hopeless though. I don't think, weight loss in general is hopeless. I think that the way a lot of people think about weight loss makes it seem hopeless, because you always think about yo-yo dieting, or people who will have success, or and then regain it all, or just not find success in the first place. But I don't think the problem is with weight loss. I think it just has to do with mentality. Weight loss is hard. It's a permanent life change, is basically how you have to think about it. And any permanent life change is going to be hard. As you decide to get a new career, it's not easy. It requires you to make significant changes to your life that are going to persist throughout your life. So it's the same thing with weight loss.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times the hard thing, funny enough, I've done another video on this, but what's difficult about losing weight in a general sense is that it is requiring you to make a sacrifice and changing something from the norm, right? So fundamentally, on the simplest level, the reason that, and maybe I'm right here in saying the majority of people, as they go into their 40s, 50s, 60s, start putting on more weight, is simply that their lifestyle has changed to be in an energy excess over time. You don't suddenly put on huge amounts of weight overnight. This is a very slow, gradual thing. And along with this gradual change in your lifestyle would be things like you're simply eating a little bit more than you did before, or maybe you're eating what you did when you were in your 20s, but your lifestyle in terms of activity and taxing your muscles and things like that is much lower.
Yeah.
The reason that I think dieting is so hard, and I did a YouTube clip on this with a little kind of graph, was that say at the moment, just for the sake of it, you're eating at 10, whatever this 10 is, right? So you're eating at 10 every single day. And on the weekends, you eat at 12. And this is in terms of energy, right? Energy balance. So if we say that you're eating at 10, and this is where your body is neither gaining weight or losing weight, and on the weekends, you maybe eat 11 or 12. So potentially you're gaining a very small amount of weight, in terms of fat, maybe 5 or 6 grams or something. And then on Monday, you feel a little bit guilty, so you dip and you eat at 9. And then this cycle goes back and forth, right? What's going to happen is that over time, over the years, your weight is going to slowly creep up. Someone comes along and says, okay, we're going to do a diet now. So what you do is you drop your energy down to maybe an 8 or something, and you try and do this, and a little bit of weight loss happens. But what is the difficult thing about this is that say 10 is your energy balance, and for the last 4, let's say 2 years, because you've got a new job and you're more stressed, you're basically eating at 12 or 13 every day. You have in your life foods that you're going to, meals that you normally have, indulgences that you have, and habits you do on the weekend, and you're constantly eating at this 11, 12, 13, right? When someone says to you, or you decide to go on a diet, you may drop your energy down to 10, which feels for you to be a diet, because this is much lower than what you're normally eating, but nothing is happening in terms of your weight loss. And the reason being is that you're basically now dipping in and out of energy balance. But for you, it feels like a sacrifice because it feels different from what you did before. And the only way you can really lose weight is when you do something extreme and restrictive, which is where you might suddenly do a low carb or a keto or a vegan or fruitarian or whatever, paleo. And then you start getting weight loss. And the reason that you're getting weight loss is that it's become so restricted that you're automatically put into this, below 10 in our example. So the reason, as Brian said, that people regain their weight after doing extreme weight losses is because there isn't anything in place for you to start understanding where you are, what 10 really feels like. you've dipped down in terms of these greatest losers, maybe into like the 5s, right? For whatever, 6 months, lost a huge amount of weight. And then you start eating a little bit more. But what happens is that eating a little bit more creeps up. And it's much harder nowadays because we have such easy access to high density, high palatable foods.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is you really just don't understand, not you, but I'm saying everybody doesn't really understand the energy content of foods. You know, a few biscuits here and there are going to push you up to energy balance for the day. And keep eating a little bit more every day, and 5 years down the line, you've got, you know, 5 to 10 kilos on you. So the short of it is that most of the effect of people regaining weight after weight loss interventions has to do with lifestyle. This is why, for instance, the more restrictive the diet is, the greater propensity for people to regain their weight at the end of it. That's why low carbohydrate diets tend to be very effective for weight loss. But unless you can keep doing a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet, you may find that your weight will start trickling up. So the fundamentals of the best diet is a diet that doesn't really feel like a diet. It just feels like your life has changed, and you have these habits that you like. And these habits might be small things. It might be you do 1 day of fasting during the week, or you may have days where you have low calorie or low carb. But this is just part of your lifestyle. It might be a day that you do a high intensity workout once or twice a week. But these are just things that are in your life. Or maybe you'll have a kind of meat-free Monday or something. And all these little things that you start adding in and become part of your personality and your diet personality, if that's such a thing, just end up being what they do. I mean, I bet you, and this might filter into the next question, there are things that Brian and I do which we know are useful in terms of keeping our weight in check, but they're not things that are necessarily that conscious to us. We don't do dieting as such unless we're doing something specific, but rather that over the time, and because we're interested in nutrition, we've just adopted these various little practices. But maybe we can talk a little bit about that after these next questions. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think we answered the question, and there's a lot on this, but we should save it for an actual weight loss episode so that this doesn't become a weight loss episode bookended by some questions.
Yeah, exactly. Because there is some interesting stuff, and we can talk about for instance, people who do extreme things like bodybuilding, because there is some adaptation. So,
as for when we're going to do a weight loss podcast, since we just mentioned it was a question, I hope before the end of the year.
I think so. I would think so.
Yeah. So sometime in the next 4 or 5 months. And I think it might actually be fun to answer about what we do, what a day looks like for us, just as like a little snack break for everyone right now.
Oh, snack you want it now? Want to do it now?
Yeah, I feel like it'll go better right now rather than after we, at the very end.
Okay. All right. So
I don't think it's going to be as interesting as you think it's going to be, but I think it could be very interesting for some people, some sports nutritionists out there. But for me, I don't think it's that interesting. Maybe for you it is.
No, I want to know what you do. I want to know if you do some weird stuff. So okay, go for it then. So let's do this then. What is your typical kind of week look like? What sort of things are you typically having for breakfast? How do you eat around your training? I don't know. It's a very broad question, this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit of a hard question to answer right now, just because my life has been so weird in the last year. Between surgeries and not being able to climb, and then radiation making me feel really tired and exhausted and just not hungry at all. And then to more recently, where I've just been tired and not doing a lot, but. And I wasn't sure if she was asking what we do personally, like what does a day in a sports nutritionist look like, or what does our day being sports nutritionists look like? Like, how do we change our diet, or how do we do? But
I think she's asking, like, if for someone who is a sports nutritionist, what does their day look like in terms of eating? Like, do they have secret habits that they don't share with us?
Secret habits. My day usually begins with I'm pretty basic when it comes to breakfast, and it will depend on what I'm feeling, but I'll either have just a protein shake. There's a lot of days when I wake up and I'm just not particularly hungry, but I want to get protein to start the day with. So I'll just have a protein shake. Or there's days when I wake up and I am hungry, in which case I'll have either cereal or oats, which is also a cereal, but feels very different to me. And then occasionally I'll like go out to breakfast or, do the normal things people do. But most of the time it's either a protein shake or cereal with milk. And then lunch is also pretty basic. It's usually leftovers. I would say that my main meal of the day, like if I'm going to be focusing on a meal, I put love into dinner, I guess is what I'm saying. I'll cook something nice for dinner. Lunch is going to be leftovers, or if I happen to have bread, a sandwich. Sometimes it's no, I don't know. I feel like I do have routines, but but they're very, I don't know, they're just nothing to write home about. I feel like there's nothing. I don't feel like they're driven by me being the main habits I would say that are driven by me being a sports nutritionist is that I put more effort into making sure that all my meals have some protein in them.
Yeah.
So that's something that I carefully work around. And none of them are crazy in protein, as we mentioned before. It's not like when I have steak for dinner or if I have chicken, I don't have like a massive hunk of meat on my plate. At least unless if I'm preparing it for myself. If other people are preparing for me, I have no control. But I do put effort into that. And then beyond that, I would say it's probably at this point more of a moderate carbohydrate diet. It used to be higher, but I've integrated a little bit more fat into my diet. Because my fatigue, I haven't been climbing as much, so I don't feel like I need the same level of carbohydrates in there. I can substitute some of the calories out without it affecting my performance, since my performance is intermittent at this point as it is. And then usually I'll try to have at least a little bit of protein before sleep. Usually that just means either a late dinner if I'm having to have dinner late, which when I'm cooking happens more often than not. I'm pretty bad at gauging how long it will take me to complete a recipe the first time through. So I'm sure my friends can all complain about that. Sometimes I'm cooking till like 8 o'clock here. Or, if my dinner's been earlier, then I'll have some higher protein snack like cheese and crackers. Or, very rarely, but on occasion, I'll have a protein shake before bed if I'm not hungry for anything else, but I want protein.
And do you do anything different on days that you're training?
I will eat a little bit more. I will adjust my schedule, my dietary schedule around my climbing or my exercise. Not so much afterwards, but I don't really want to climb on a full stomach or exercise on a full stomach. So I'll make sure that my meals are going to take place after I've done these activities. Also because I get home and I want to eat. So, but that's the main way. I don't have too much of a change otherwise. I think even like 2 or 3 years ago, it might have been a different story. But now, again, just because life's been weird, I don't have as much of a focus on it. It still drives decisions, but I'm not like 2 years ago, 3 years ago when I was really like training hard and that was my goal. I had goals as far as it sounds like I'm goalless now. I have no goal when it comes to climbing. Back when I had these, strong goals and, really wanted to get stronger as a climber, I would bring a water bottle with me instead of just using the water fountains like everyone else. But that water bottle would have like a homemade sports drink in it. And that way I could sustain a long training session of high quality and, still be able to go and do some more training the next day. And I would make sure that I was consuming, I was tracking, my caloric intake pretty specifically, and just making sure that I was getting enough to support my exercise, and also, a little bit above that, so I could support some muscular growth and hopefully, get even stronger and be able to accomplish my goals. So 2 years ago, this would have been a more interesting question. Now I feel like I'm eating my diet is a healthy diet. I eat a lot of vegetables. I eat diverse foods, but it doesn't feel like it's really it's not an athlete's diet driven by sports nutrition the same way it was a couple of years ago. How about you, Tom?
Yeah. Before you do that, do you take any supplements at all apart from protein?
Yeah, I do. I still take creatine and beta alanine, so I take those daily. Occasionally, I miss a day. I mix them in with a protein shake. So if I don't have a protein shake in a day, which does happen, then I will just miss that day usually, because I'm. We talk about habits are a big thing, and my habit is I'll put them in a protein shake, and I don't think to put them in water if I'm just having cereal for breakfast or something.
Yeah.
So I take those and take some vitamin D, especially during the winter months. Try to get that, and I'll take some fish oil on the days that I don't consume fish. Although I'm planning on doing a fish oil article sometime soon, because
good.
There's been plenty, more research is showing that maybe the fish oil is not as beneficial for people like me as maybe we would have, as we thought even 10 years ago.
You mean
So,
fish eaters? You mean?
well, for fish, yeah. People like me being, healthy individuals that consume fish as part of their diet. Exactly. Healthy young adults or adults.
And do you have a like an indulgent food, or a food that you eat, a type of meal you eat when you're feeling really crappy or emotional? Or
oh man, I think meal is the wrong word. Like there's a lot of meals that feel indulgent, like barbecue. It feels like an indulgent meal. I don't eat it that often, but I don't necessarily gravitate towards them. I think that if you were to look at my weakness, it's cake. I love cake. Can't really explain it, but somebody offers me a nice slice of cake, I will always be happy to eat a second slice after that if they offer me a second. I don't know. I love cake, and I like it to the point where, like, I know that it just sounds like, oh, who doesn't like cake? But I like it to the point that my family and friends tease me about being the cake loving nutritionist.
This is where
it's just like, sometimes
bias comes out.
Sometimes you run into, I don't know if this happens to you, but like I'll run into people who know I do nutrition at the grocery store, and they're always like, "Oh, don't look at my cart." Like they're afraid I'm going to judge them for what's in their cart, which I'm not. I'm not going to judge anybody for what's in their cart, and I'm specifically not going to judge anybody for what's in their cart, because in the past, when I've run into those people, without fail, I've got cake in my cart. It's like, what are you worried about? Like, got a slice of cake just sitting right here. I'm gonna bring it home and I'm gonna eat it. It's gonna be delicious. So yeah, I do have an indulgent food, and it is cake. The rest of desserts I could kind of take or leave. Like, doesn't really, like, I enjoy them, I think, as much as the next person, but I'm not seeking them out. But cake.
Cake is the thing, right?
Cake is delicious. How about you?
Okay. Well, now I feel like I'm far more geeky, but not really. I think I have I have habits built in. So at the moment I'm getting up and training in the morning. So this is just general gym stuff. and I literally do like 2 exercises, like weighted pull-ups and deadlifting one day. The next day I do squats and pressing, so
Okay.
overhead press or bench or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that fasted because I'm basically there at like I normally get there at maybe 10 to 7 or something in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no time. Sometimes if it's a day where I know I'm going to do well, I don't feel so great, I have a Trek bar. I think, do you get Trek bars out there?
Trek bar, is this like
It's
an
like
energy bar of some
no, it's
sort?
like a little muesli type bar. Like it's all natural stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
I
just
mean, I've never heard of a Trek bar, but we have granola bars, and
yeah, exactly. It's like a granola bar.
we
So
would
I have,
never call them a muesli bar.
well, I'm posh. I come from Sussex. So yeah, I have that on the way to the training session. Then I do the training session. Then I come to the office. So for those who are watching YouTube, this is my office. So I'm a Linux system administrator full time. Well, apart from Fridays, which I've now got off. And then I do sports nutrition full time at the same time when my boss is not looking. And then on other days I do personal training. And things like that. So I try and get my training done in the morning, gym stuff. And then when I get to the office, I normally do all my meetings that I have. And then 11 o'clock, I pretty much have the same breakfast, which is a tub of cottage cheese, which is like 300 grams, like a packet of blueberries, which is like 150 grams, and a whole bunch of nuts. So I have like 3 bags of nuts under my desk here. And I just grab like fingerfuls and throw them in and eat that at my desk. And that's my first meal of the day. And then normally I take lunch at like 2 o'clock. And it's quite nice to walk around here. And I basically have like a moving lunch, or what should I call a moving lunch? So I just go to the shop and grab really whatever I feel like. It's normally like some fruit. It might be another tub of cottage cheese or quark. Or like a wrap or something, or like literally a bag of like mixed veg, broccoli or loose peas or something. Basically anything I can keep in my hands as I walk. And I find it very meditative. So this is when I listen to podcasts a lot, and I just walk for like 45 minutes nonstop, and not think about it. It's really nice. There's water around here, so this is kind of my chill out time. I can not think about stuff and just chomp on stuff as I go. If it's raining, then I'll go to a local cafe, and I normally have something hot that they make, and that can be like lasagna, or like they do like a nice like pad thai type thing. The majority of my carbohydrate for the day is in my lunch, if that's something interesting for people. So I don't tend to have much carbohydrate for breakfast. I don't like it so much. Oh, the other thing I do, which is kind of geeky, is and people are going to hate me for this, is that I actually have MCT oil in my black coffee. I don't put butter in my black coffee, so it's not bulletproof coffee, because I see almost no reason to put butter in a coffee. It seems empty calories. But MCT oil has some benefit in terms of producing a few ketones. So I do that, and that seems to give me a little bit of focus. So I have that with my breakfast. Then when I get back to the office, I normally have a cup of tea, but like a rooibos tea, which doesn't have caffeine. I normally only have 1 cup of coffee on a weekday, and it's in the morning. And I'll have biscuits, because there tends to be biscuits and things in the office, or cookies in America, they would call them.
We would.
Yeah. So so basically like cookies, whatever, because I work in IT, there's always tons of crappy stuff around here. But I'll have, again, basically I have most of my carbohydrates in a space of about 2 or 3 hours. And then it really depends on what the rest of the day is going to be like. So say it's a day like today where I'm not doing any training in the evening. My dinner tends to be quite late, because I might be doing spreadsheets for clients, because basically my day ends and then I start my next day of my next job. So I tend to have a low carb dinner, really. And that normally is a massive bowl of like stock that I've made, and I throw in various green vegetables at different times to cook them, along with maybe tofu or some sort of meat. And yeah, I just have that. Sometimes if I want something sweet, I'll have fruit after that. But that's really my normal go-to. It's really loads and loads of veggies, lots of lemon juice, oil, and a big soup. If I'm going climbing in the evening, or my new hobby now is pole dance. So I've been doing that for like 3 months. That's awesome. I almost like pole dance more than climbing, which is slightly worrying. But then people tend to look better in class than in the climbing center. So what I normally do then is I just have like some sort of carby snack. So normally like 60 grams. So that might even be like 2 Trek bars when I get to the class or climbing center. And then afterwards, I then have, not necessarily with pole, but certainly with climbing, when I get home, I'll probably have the same sort of thing that I had with the soup type thing, but then I'll have rice with it as well. And that could be like probably 2.5 cups of rice, cooked rice, or sometimes sweet potatoes, but I don't really do that much. One other thing that I do, which might be interesting for people, is I do like fasting. So at least 4 times a month, what I'll do is I have what I call, well, it used to be called Fast Friday, but now I do pole dance on Fridays, so I don't fast. So I basically have it on Thursday. So what that really is, it means that I only have 1 meal on a Thursday. So I have a black coffee for breakfast, and I also tend to do cardio on that day. So I won't do any weight training, but what I'll do is I'll just sit on a rower for 15 minutes and a bike for 15 minutes. And then I come to the office, have a cup of coffee. Sometimes I'll have MCT oil, and if I want to. And then the next time I eat is dinner. And what that tends to be actually is there's a really nice like thin crust Italian pizza place here. And all I do is I get like my notebook and I get a nice podcast, which will be on something completely unrelated to nutrition. It might just be like a talk podcast or something. And I sit there and I sit in the shop and I have a pizza and listen to the podcast and take some notes and things like that and just chill out, and then go home and watch some movies or something. And sometimes I have a whole tub of Ben and Jerry's as well, which is not ideal, but you know, that or for instance, I might go home and have like a really nice meal with a glass of red wine or something. Unfortunately, I'm single, so it's all very sad. But I tend to cook well on the Thursday. And so then Saturday comes along, right? And I'll have clients in the morning. So depending on things, I'll probably fast through my clients, because I'll finish with clients at about 2 o'clock. And depending on how tired I am, I might not actually eat anything. Funny enough, I don't have coffee in the morning on those days. I only have coffee during the working week. Then what I do is say it's going to be a really big climbing day. And it will be like, well, I'll hang out at the climbing center from like maybe 5 o'clock until close, which will be like maybe 8 or 9. I tend to pack my bag with probably 3 meals. So I'll have maybe 2 tubs of cottage cheese. I'll have 2 containers of like fruit. I'll have maybe a pack of muesli bars or 2 packs of granola bars. And I eat a hell of a lot of carbohydrate during that whole day. Probably, I mean, I've got through, if I'm doing like a power session, like on the moon board, I'll easily get through maybe 4 to 5 of those granola bars, plus stopping and having cottage cheese and fruit, and probably have a coffee halfway through. Basically, I just run on glucose that whole session. I just power through that all. And everyone's like, wow, you really just keep going. And I'm like, yes, because I'm eating, that's best, you know. And the amount of people I offer these granola bars to and they don't want to eat them, but that's their problem. And then dinner, I'll come back and I'll have a big meal again. So that might be like rice and some meat and things like that. So it really the Saturday, if I'm doing hard training, I end up eating a hell of a lot. Maybe as well as it's part of it is kind of slight compensation for the day before, but not consciously. It might be just that my body feels like eating more. On days where I don't have clients in the morning, I will go to a nice like French cafe and I'll have boiled eggs and toast and croissant and maybe something other sweet for breakfast, and then I'll trundle off and maybe do some play, go to the climbing center again and do some play. So it really varies because it really varies on clients and how busy I am. But the main thing is that I eat a lot of carbohydrate during the training. I also have caffeine during the training. I have some caffeine before pole dance as well, or halfway through. Sometimes I take a B vitamin, like a B complex, and a 5-HTP and alpha GPC. I kind of mix these three things together and have that. Then almost every single evening, I have the same thing, which is basically I have a scoop of creatine, I have a scoop of glycine, so they're both 5 grams, and I might, if I remember, have a vitamin D capsule, and then jump into bed. I don't take protein before bed, mainly because I tend to eat dinner very late. Sometimes it can be like 10 or 11 o'clock, which is not ideal. But that's really the main thing I do. I have a bottle of fish oil in my fridge, and I do take that when I don't have fish. But that might only be like when I remember, which is maybe twice a week, because I do eat a lot of salmon. I tend to eat less red meat now than I did before, so I tend to eat a lot of salmon and tofu and dairy. But that's really the main thing. Interesting enough, though I am a big advocate of collagen before training, I just don't remember that much to take it, to be honest. And anyone who's ever taken like hydrolyzed collagen realize it tastes absolutely awful. It basically tastes like ground up hooves, so which is exactly what it is. So put like this: if I know that I'm going to be doing a very long climbing session, like a whole Saturday or Sunday, then I will take some in a shaker, and I'll have that 30 minutes before I do any training or start my climbing session. But I don't take it as religiously as perhaps looks like for someone who's written a very long article on it. What I do take religiously though is glycine. So yeah, I probably take 5 to 10 grams of glycine every day, and glycine, 5 grams of glycine before bed helps you sleep very well, to the point that I've now had 3 clients, so a new one, who have tried glycine before bed, and all of them have reported to have much deeper sleep. So certainly it's something for you to try.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I find it, it's part of the GABA pathway. So it appears to give me very good night's sleep when I take it. But I think that's it. I mean, I don't take any other. I have K2 on my shelf, which if I remember, I'll take that along with the vitamin D. But overall, my life during the week is very standard. I eat a hell of a lot of cottage cheese, and yeah, I think that's everything. But yeah, I do like fasting, and I do like. If I go traveling, if I do travel, then I will probably not eat anything during the travel period, because I find that easier.
All right, interesting. Cool. Well, I guess we should dive into the last 2 science questions.
So. These won't be too long now, folks, because I realize it's an hour and a half.
Only an hour and a half, man. Well, we're doing great.
Okay, so right, yeah, let me read this one, because you're going to answer this. Okay, What do you think about adaptogens, especially ashwagandha? Is that how you pronounce it? Ashwagandha.
I believe so. Yeah.
Ashwagandha in climbing, strength, sports, and quality of life in general. And that is from Tomasz Przewoznik. Tomasz Przewoznik.
I just wrote, the reason I'm fielding this question is just a couple weeks ago, I do something works out usually to about every other Friday. Called Question of the Week. I was doing it weekly, but I just wasn't getting enough questions. So I do a question of the week on my Patreon, which is the Climbing Nutrition Patreon. And I answered a question about ashwagandha, specifically about power output for climbers. So I'll talk a little bit about ashwagandha first, and then I'll talk about adaptogens after that, or adaptogens in general. The question that I had answered was based on an examine.com, and if you're not familiar with examine.com, it's a great resource for just looking at some scientific details about supplements in particular. I think it's only supplements, but some things like protein are, I wouldn't consider a supplement, even if you take it supplementally. Anyway, getting off track. The question was about ashwagandha and its ability to increase power output in athletes, and whether that applies to climbers in general. And examine.com had noted 3 studies which all demonstrated that ashwagandha improved power output. And so, and this is a rare case where I disagree with examine.com and their conclusion, which was that it does improve power output. To me, the studies were not that impressive. 2 of them were in journals of Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurvedic medicine does not have any science-based evidence for efficacy. I'm not saying that no part of that, could have any benefit whatsoever. I'm just saying that the modality is not a science-based modality. And so when I see reports published in, like journals of Ayurveda, or, journals of acupuncture, or journals of, any of these things, like it's a red flag that these are probably not high quality articles. You'll get high quality articles on these topics within normal is maybe the wrong word, but within high quality journals. But if they're specifically going into a journal on Ayurvedic medicine, it's probably not going to be a really strong study. So, and sometimes it's hard to read through and actually see where the flaws come in, which is relevant to the 3rd study. The 3rd study was published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition, which is the accrediting agency that both me and Tom have our sports nutrition credentials through. And it also, I think, had I was skeptical of its conclusion, because it had more subjects, and it had 57 untrained subjects, which is a lot more than you often see. Pardon me, in a sports nutrition study. But I was skeptical of the conclusion, because at the end of the study, the group taking ashwagandha had increased their bench press by 45 pounds over the placebo group. So the both groups started being able to bench press around 70 pounds. So like not a lot, but
that's like 31 kilos apparently.
Yeah, 31 to 32 kilos. It's like the bar plus another 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So like putting a 10 and a 2.5 on each end. And then the placebo group ended up being able to bench press 128 pounds, while the ashwagandha group ended up being able to bench press 174 pounds. And that's just a preposterous difference. If that were actually like traceable to the ashwagandha, then that would be far and away the most potent ergogenic aid that we've ever seen.
So how long was this? How long were they training for?
They trained for actually, let me check.
So the placebo group went from around about 30 kilos
for 8 weeks.
To what?
For over 8 weeks, the placebo group went from 32, being able to bench press 32 kilos to 58, whereas the other group, the ashwagandha group, went from 32 kilos to 79. So it's a 68% improvement over the treatment group over the placebo group, and that's just so enormous. Just like I said, that would be the most potent ergogenic aid that we've ever witnessed. They almost got double gains over the other group, and that just seems, it's just so unlikely that that is actually traceable to ashwagandha that I really question. Like, looking through the study, it, like, methods and everything, it looked fine. You just don't know all the time though what's happening, and if a conclusion seems too good to be true, it often is. There's probably something else going on there. Certainly if that was the case, we would expect to see more studies done on this, but we haven't. So there's only like 3 studies, and I just don't think the evidence is particularly strong for ashwagandha as far as climbing and strength and of sports and then go. And then as for adaptogens, adaptogen we kind of treat it as like this group that has that's actually been studied and that they have properties in common with each other, but it's a disparate group of herbs. We don't know for sure. I mean, and the thing about herbs is many of them are just really unstudied, or they have been studied and they've been determined not to be that great. I'm not really a fan of the idea of adaptogens. It just doesn't, we don't have enough evidence to say that these are going to do what they do. And if we did, we'd have to look at them individually. We not as a group, but like look at just rhodiola or just ashwagandha, because there's nothing that actually ties them together. It's not like they're all non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. They don't all have the exact same method of action, or similar methods of action. I shouldn't say that all NSAIDs have the same. They're not similar in that sense. They're just similar in that we believe, hypothetically, that they help the body maintain homeostasis.
Right.
But it's hypothetical. We don't actually have any evidence that any of these herbs that fall into the adaptogenic category actually do that. It's just hypothetical. And then even if we wanted to say that they did, we'd have to look at them individually, which we have for some of them, but it has the evidence is not impressive.
So what is the definition of an adaptogen then? I always thought it was something that just caused some sort of hormetic stress.
I think when you look at what they're supposed to do, they're supposed to essentially, like, let's say like cortisol, you have something with cortisol. If your cortisol is too low, an adaptogen would bring it back to baseline.
Okay.
If it's too high, it would start bringing it back to baseline. So they're called adaptogens because they're supposed to help your body adapt to whatever the circumstance is. But like I said, we just don't have any evidence that any of these adaptogenic herbs actually do that. And then beyond that, there's just the whole there's the whole problem with herbal quality control in general. So that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, I think I know there's a lot of there tends to be kind of a lot of guru type trainers and nutrition people out there who they have a flavor of the month in terms of, do you have adrenal fatigue? Then maybe you should take this, blend of herbs and spices. I think where I have a little bit of a problem with them is they tend to be pretty expensive for what you get. And I think the other thing is that, I mean, I don't have a problem with people trying stuff. If you're getting this stuff from a proper source, what I would recommend is if you are going to try one of these adaptogens, then it's probably worth trying one of them on their own and having some way of measuring whether or not it's having an effect on you, either, looking at your training diary. And potentially, maybe you're taking one of these things and you're sleeping better. And by sleeping better, you are recovering better and your mood is better, et cetera, et cetera. Or you might take one that gives you, makes you more alert. And so you don't have to rely on caffeine. So I think they probably can be useful. What I would steer people away from is the very popular, very expensive mixed products that you can find. And the reason being is that you pick up any of these, these products in flashy bottles that are, supposed to be nootropic and things like that. And if you go through the list of ingredients, they all sound incredibly impressive. And there are no doubt hundreds of papers talking about the impressive effects of these different substances. The problem is, though, is that if you look at the dose that you're getting per capsule, it's ridiculously below anything that has been studied, meaning that just because they have ashwagandha in the capsule, you're getting like 2 milligrams. And maybe the studies that use, I mean, how much were they taking in this study?
Let me take a look at that. In the bench press study, they were taking 300 milligrams twice daily.
Yeah, there we go. So, you're not going to get that. So if this effect has happened from that much, supposedly, you'll find that if you look at any of these bottles of mixed stuff, you're looking at probably 20 milligrams or something like that of each substance. And it's incredibly overpriced, 30 or 40 pounds for, a month's supply. So, that sort of stuff is like snake oil. It's really, I think it's just unkind. This is not to say that these things are not they don't have an effect. They may do, but it's just the doses that you're getting from these multi things are just a waste of time. So I think do your research on these things, but go to good sites. Don't go to spiritualhealthnow.com or something.
Like I said, examine.com is usually a pretty good source. I like a lot of what they put out there, and they are science-based, but sometimes I just disagree with they're pretty good at like looking at I guess the issue is they have an algorithm, and for things that are well studied, the algorithm works pretty well, but when it's only got like 3 results, then they're not necessarily reading through every paper and looking through the methods and trying to figure out whether the studies were performed well. They're just kind of looking at, like, they're checking some boxes, and if the right boxes are checked, then they might come to a conclusion that I find dubious. But most of the time that's not an issue. The ashwagandha is actually the first time I've really seen that to be true. And it's also because maybe you were only looking at one effect of this one thing. So
well, that's interesting. I might look at that paper and see because that seems quite extraordinary.
It will be amazing, man. Be like taking a group of 58 untrained climbers and giving one half of them ashwagandha and the other, a normal amount. And, they both start climbing at like a 5-6 rate, but then, one group's climbing 5-10 at the end of the study, the placebo, and the others are all 5-12 climbers. You just be like, wow, it's an amazing improvement in one group.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for that, Thomas. I hope that answered it for you. So next one I got this on Instagram today because I posted a thing saying, does anyone have any questions? And
last minute questions and the final question.
Just trying to see if there's anyone else has ever put anything else. No. So somebody called CJW Photo. I don't think he has his name on his page. Let me see if he does. Oh yes, he does. Sorry, Chris Whedon sent me this question, and he says, "You mentioned in one of your podcasts that high dose vitamin C can negatively impact training. Can you explain more and also specify how much is a high dose?" Yes. So I think this is what we covered in depth in our recovery podcast, which was, I believe, it was a previous one, right?
Was it? Yeah, I guess it was. It's been It's been so long now.
That's right. Don't make me feel guilty. Okay, so here's the quick answer to this. When you do exercise, you're causing a physiological stress, which is signaling your body to, or your muscles or your tissues to adapt. So part of the exercise response is that you're going to produce free radicals or reactive oxygen species, and the thought of taking antioxidants is to basically mop up these reactive molecules in the body. And this is a normal thing that we do from just the food that we eat and that we produce endogenously, which is basically maintaining this hormetic balance between these reactive oxygen species and reduced basically it's the balance. But what we've seen is that years ago everyone got on the bandwagon and wanted to reduce these ROS from a health point of view. And what we discovered is that if you try and mop up all of these reactive oxygen species, you are mitigating some of the signaling for exercise adaptation or training adaptation. So what seems to be unanimous now is that taking high dose antioxidants around the training session is definitely a no-no. And also taking high amounts of antioxidants throughout the day, if you're training, is generally a no-no. So what are we talking about? So your need for, let's say, the two main antioxidants are vitamin E and vitamin C, which is the normal ones you would take as a supplement. What you need per day is for vitamin E is 15 milligrams per day. For vitamin C, and what I mean by need, I mean this is a recommended daily allowance.
This is the amount that 97.5% of people will get adequate. They'll have more than adequate amount if they take this much.
Yeah. So 15 milligrams per day for vitamin E. And for vitamin C, for males, you're looking at 90 milligrams per day. For females, 75 milligrams. In studies that are providing what is classified as high dose antioxidants, most of the time for vitamin C, you're looking at around about 1 gram per day. And that tends to be split into like 2 500 milligram doses. And for vitamin E, you're looking at 400 international units. But I didn't do a conversion of what that is in milligrams. Maybe Brian can do that while I'm talking. But put it like this. You're going to get well above 90 milligrams per day from eating. So if you're eating, say, like a bell pepper, you could be getting almost 60 milligrams. If you're eating lots of fruits and vegetables, you're going to probably easily get 200 or 300 milligrams of vitamin C a day, if not more, depending on how much fresh vegetables and things you have in your diet. Does this mean that by having a bunch of vegetables that will take you up to nearly a gram of vitamin C a day is detrimental? Probably be a lot of vegetables to get that much, but let's say 500 milligrams. No, that's not going to cause an issue because you're going to get a whole bunch of other stuff along with that. Where it becomes an issue is literally chronic high dose. So if you are taking, and this is the interesting thing, actually, people don't often think about this. Say you're eating a healthy diet, and then you're also supplementing with a multivitamin, and then you at the climbing center, and you also have like a protein shake from the fridge, and then maybe later on the day you have some sort of granola bar type sports bar. All of these little things start adding up, and you could easily get 1 gram per day of vitamin C, if not more.
Yeah.
And is this beneficial? Supposedly from the studies, this isn't, because it may be hampering this adaptation to training. But the only time I've seen in papers where taking antioxidants can be beneficial is, for instance, following intense exercise. 500 milligrams was shown to decrease the incidence of upper respiratory infections. So
Right.
the easy way to think of it is like this. There is very little reason to take a multivitamin. I recommend Googling Brian Rigby on Amazon, because he's written a book about multivitamins, which is one of the reasons which I actually contacted him all those years ago to do a podcast, because I realized he was a smart man, and he actually changed my mind about taking multivitamins. So that's a good book, and it's cheap as well. If, for instance, you are doing, and we covered this in I think in the previous podcast, if you're on a competition circuit and you're doing back-to-back competitions, then maybe taking a antioxidant after your session, including something like tart cherry juice or something like that, a high dose vitamin C, that might be beneficial, because you're trying to recover very quickly, because you're not really wanting adaptations then. You're not wanting
Right.
to train. You're trying to recover so you can do more work the next day.
Right.
If you are merely going about your week doing your training sessions, then you should use your fruits and vegetables as your really only source of antioxidants. There is no reason to take additional vitamins for that.
Exactly. Vitamin C is not a challenging vitamin, nor is it to get it from your diet, nor is vitamin A, nor is any of them really. And if you have a healthy diet, I shouldn't say a healthy diet, because in my book I talk about how people, even with unhealthy diets, do not end up with the problems that you might associate with vitamin deficiencies. Vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, they do happen. And when they do happen, then the vitamin or mineral that you are deficient in is a good thing to supplement with. And, your doctor will certainly prescribe one in those circumstances. But outside of it, your diet is going to be adequate, especially for vitamin C. If you eat even a relatively modest amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, that's going to provide all of the vitamin C that you are going to need. There's no need to have an emergency packet or, take a vitamin C pill or anything. It's just going to give you way more vitamin C than you could use. And that is, as we discussed in the recovery, it's not going to be beneficial for your training gains or for your adaptation. You're better off without it. But don't worry about it if it's coming from your diet. If it's in your diet, it's very unlikely to cause the same sorts of problems.
Yeah, maybe they need to do a study, but I don't think there's a study out there that has looked at that specifically. Athletes consuming a high vegetable fruit diet having problems.
I would be surprised if they do. I mean, the bottom line is, fresh fruits and vegetables they have so many more antioxidants than just vitamin C. And the way that our body, gets rid of reactive oxygen species is fairly complicated. And when you have a diet that is rich and complex in multiple antioxidants, then you support it in a way that you don't support it with just a pure vitamin C. So, or with a pure beta carotene supplement or pure vitamin E or any of these, or even a mixture of the three. Your diet is better at providing your nutritional needs than any pill is.
And I'll just say this, and because it's difficult, because I constantly have to check myself on this, is that there's a lot of noise around diet about that we are deficient in these different things because of farming practices and all this sort of stuff. And there's a little bit of truth in that, but what's difficult about vitamins is for some reason we think they're completely harmless in high doses, and that isn't true. Some aren't, some are. can be dangerous. And we, for some reason, think the more is better. That, oh, if I have a healthy diet, just imagine what it is like having a healthy diet plus this really nice, expensive multivitamin.
Right.
And yeah, I don't. I have to constantly try and say, as appealing as that sounds, it's just not true. But like we say, there are some things that are beneficial, like vitamin D, which is difficult, if not nearly impossible, to get from the diet without, if you weren't producing it via sunlight on your skin. So yeah, I think with all of these things, though, and this is a little caveat. Whether you would notice taking your multivitamin and training is having a negative impact on you or not is debatable. But you have the information now to think, well, maybe it's just not worth my while having, that Barocca every day. Do you get Barocca there?
Barocca?
Barocca is like a fizzy orange tablet. I think it's vitamin C and B vitamins.
Oh no, we have something very similar. It's called Emergency,
Right.
like Emergen-C.
Oh yeah, exactly. So it's a fizzy thing.
Yeah.
So
same
yeah,
thing though.
Yeah. So yeah, all of these things add up. So think of it like that. All these little tweaks that you can do and all these little optimizations can help. So maybe if you're not training and making training gains, maybe check your diet that you're not overdoing some of these things. Yeah. Okay. That is all the questions. Thank you everybody who wrote into us in the various medias.
Yes.
Please do it again. Like we would really like to do this again.
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of fun. I like answering questions sometimes. Like I like just talking about topics anyway, but just determining a topic, with Tom and preparing a whole podcast about it. But it's nice when people have questions for us because we know that that's something that at least one person's interested in.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we determine what we're going to talk about, it can feel like, well, I hope people are interested in this topic because it's what we're talking about. But here, we know that it's something that is on somebody's mind. So it feels good to be able to answer a question.
Yeah.
So yeah, think up questions for next time. Don't have to get them to us right away. Just, obviously you don't have to get them to us right away. Just, if you have a notebook or something, just whenever you have a question, write it down and we'll solicit some more sometime in the future.
Yeah. And I had said to Brian at one point, if we have enough interest, we could do a live, like a Facebook live or something, which would be interesting because it would put us on the spot. But yeah, if that's something that people would like to do one day, we could try and time it some way to do that. So yeah, so we've got a couple of new reviews here. The first one is on iTunes, and that is from somebody called Maxinen. And he says the subject is promising with 3 stars. And that says, great to have a science-based climbing podcast finally. However, it could benefit greatly from being less meandering and stammery. I agree.
Yeah.
We have waffled on again for 2 hours.
It's amazing where the time goes.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree with you. I listen to a couple of podcasts myself, and they are succinct and they are chock full of information, and they are a great listen. It is unlikely that Brian and I are probably going to get to that point anytime soon. I think it's just because we like talking and we enjoy it.
But we can improve, and we are working on it. I feel like we do better episode to episode, even if we're not being more concise. We're at least we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for that. That's a very honest review.
Yeah,
and has obviously reduced our overall star rating considerably. So
oh no.
so anyone who has a 4 or 5-star thought on our podcast, please put that in place. But definitely, like if we ever get the t-shirts done, because Maxon, because you are one of the first reviewers, we'll certainly try and get in contact with you and send you out a t-shirt. We can't make any promises, but yeah, certainly for the first few reviewers, we'll send that out. Then today I got a YouTube review. So this is from somebody called Kai, and he says, by the way, love your ClimbSci podcast. It's really educating instead of just telling people what to do, ! And funny enough, this is a comment that I get a lot from people, which surprises me, but I've had this maybe 3 or 4 times now where people have said, I really like this podcast because you don't just tell people what to do, which is odd because I thought that we were at some level telling people what to do, but apparently it comes across that we are just providing an educational podcast, and it's very open in that sense. So I'm pleased with that. I'm pleased that comes across like that.
Yeah, that's great. I think we try to hit both. I often feel like we do more education than telling, but I think we try to fit the both in, and I'm glad that people are enjoying both aspects of it.
Yeah, and I say this to everyone who contacts me over Instagram and things like that. Like literally, it really, certainly for me, it makes my day when I get a little thing from somebody saying, oh, by the way, I listened to that podcast and I found this was useful, or or by the way, I'm now eating more carbohydrate and I'm finding that my training is much better. Like no, really, like reach out to Brian and I to let us know this, because sometimes it feels like this is a one-way conversation. So we would like to know whether this has been worth our time to do, and it really encourages us. It's not you would think that it's an easy thing to just sit here and talk about this stuff, but actually it's quite taxing. Hence why you don't have loads of shows the whole time, because it's we have to fit it around our lives, and it's not an easy thing just to do. So thank you to everyone for listening. Now, there was a rumor that potentially the next podcast might be a long one on the ketogenic diet.
Who's spreading that rumor? Yeah, that is what Tom and I have discussed, possibly diving into that. We want to make sure that we give it the attention it deserves.
Yeah.
So that is what is on the docket.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. Yeah.
We reserve the right to change the topic at any time prior to the publishing of the next episode. But if all goes well, that is what you will be hearing from us in September.
Yeah. So now I'm on holiday for the first time in like 2 years, to like the first week of September. But I'm hoping that over that time, I'm going to be sitting on the beach reading about the ketogenic diet. But in the meantime, please do reach out on, probably the best place is Climbing Nutrition Facebook page, or the Brian normally puts this episode on climbingnutrition.com. So in the comments box, if you have specific questions about the ketogenic diet, put them in there so that we can answer them. Even if you think that the question is obvious, like, well, how much fat should I be eating? Put that in the question so that we know what is actually on people's minds, rather than us just talking about the sciencey stuff, but rather, what do people actually think about? Do you have a friend who's done a ketogenic diet and is doing incredibly well? All this sort of stuff. So reach out to us and put in stuff that you want us to cover specifically. And yeah, we will get geeky on this one, because this is a very big topic. And it should be an exciting one. So hopefully you're going to get it done by the end of September in terms of research and then record. Life sometimes gets a bit busy, but we'll definitely make it a good one.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you to everyone listening. Once again, thank you to Tom for hosting with me.
Thank you.
It's always a blast. And one day we'll learn how to be more concise while still having a blast.
That's right. That's right. So you can find us on ClimbSci.com. That's where we put the website bit. Search for us. Well, if you're listening to this, you don't need to search for us. You're already listening to us. You can find Brian on climbingnutrition.com and Climbing Nutrition Facebook. You can find me on Useful Coach on Facebook or useful.coach as the website. And I'm being more active on Instagram now, which I never thought I'd say, but I do post a lot now, including some of my pole dancing. So, if you're into that sort of thing, check it out. I think that's everything. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys in September, hopefully, for some ketogenic information.
Avocados at the ready.
That's right.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.